Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to move on with this week's theme, lyrical dissonance, songs that have a specific theme to them and lyrics that go in an opposite direction. Funny songs with depressing lyrics, stuff like that. Today we're going to be looking at a group called the Antlers. Can't say I've heard of them before. The song is called 2. Let's dive in and see what the Antlers are bringing to us today.
Something that I didn't know that I wanted to hear. There was nothing that I could do to save you. The choir's gonna sing and this thing is gonna kill you. Something in my throat made my next word shake, and something in the wires made the light bulbs break. There was glass inside my feet and raining down from the ceiling. And open up the scars that had just finished healing. It tore apart the canyon running down your theme. I thought that it was beautiful, it made me a believer. And as it opened I could hear you howling from your room. But I hid out in the hole until the hurricane blew. When I reappeared and
Interesting, we got the dissonance in the vocals. They're also very quiet compared to the guitar.
So close to dying, they should have listened, they thought that you were lying. Daddy was an asshole, he fucked you up. He'll put gears in your head, now he greases them up. And no one paid attention when you just stopped eating. 87 pounds and this all bears repeating.
Interesting, it looked like they were playing the ride, but I don't hear a ride. I definitely hear the hi-hat. The lyrics, the vocals are just relentless. There's a real melancholy to this.
There's no other witnesses, just us two. There's two people living in one small room. From the two half families staring at you. Two ways to tell the story, no one worries. Two silver rings on our fingers in a hurry.
Or, yeah, melancholy is about right. It's a very thoughtful vibe. A sort of warm pensiveness. Interesting visual here. Interesting. Yeah. All right. So it kind of reminds me of Yesterday's Over, where they sort of just stick in a specific vibe for the entire song and make small variations on it. Um, all right, I guess let's start with the thing that's most evident to me, which is the slight atonality of it all. The songs, well, the other thing that really sticks out is the repetition. We'll get to that too. It starts out though with the guitar, and the guitar just plays one note, bounces up a little bit, comes back down, bounces down a little bit, comes back up. It just kind of hovers around this little idea here, right? The entire song is fixated on this singular note. The sort of, like I said, kind of goes up, kind of comes back down, but always returns where it is. It is very repetitive. I'd even say that for me, a bit boring. And I don't like using that word. I think it has negative connotations to it. I think there's better ways to speak about it, which is why I landed on repetitive instead. But I really could not help but want the song to move on. A minute and a half in, the song is 20% over, and we have just had the guitar basically playing one note and the vocals singing over it for 20% of the song. I don't know how others felt about it. I was really ready for it to move on, for something to happen. And I'm going to assume that the purpose of it is to shed light on the vocals here and make them the spotlight of the section. But interestingly, in this part, the vocals are difficult to hear. They're very quiet against the guitar. They feel a bit fuzzy to me. I can't really make them. There's not a lot of clarity to them, and part of that might be because there's two vocals going on, and they're not crisply overlaid. For better or worse, it gives it a bit of an imperfect feeling to it. It reminds me a lot of the vocals from the microphones. And there I spoke about the same exact idea very positively. And I'm sure maybe once we get to the end of this analysis, we get to the lyrics, it might make more sense to me. But right now, I feel like having the harmonized, they're not even harmonized vocals, the layered vocals, because they're doing the same exact line, the same exact melody, same exact range. But the layered vocals, but allowing the imperfection. Sometimes one of them will hold a note a little longer. Sometimes it'll come in just a hair late with its syllable. Sometimes it comes in a hair early with the syllable. There's just a lot of imperfections or differences, I should say, between the two recordings of the same idea, and it muddies it up as it would with anything. If you play the exact same idea two times but change up some of the attacks or releases, it's going to sound muddy. This is what I talk about. When we discuss the opposite side of the spectrum, and I talk about how I really love high quality, perfected precision in bands like Archspire or basically anything tech death, where you really need everybody to be playing the exact same attack, the exact same length, and This is the opposite of that, where you have two ideas and the attacks and the releases are not identical, and they kind of blur into each other at times because of it. And of course, I'm going to assume this was done for an effect. Either that or this is just the way that the band operates. And, like I said, when we checked out the microphones, I think there was another band, another indie rock band that I liked that did this as well. But, when you kind of get into this indie rock vibe, this style of vocals is kind of common. So it could just be the stylistic choice that they went with. But at least for me, it seems to be at odds with what they're aiming to do. The guitar is singular. It is the only presence outside of the vocals. It seems to be intentionally getting out of the way as far as interesting ideas, so that the moving melody line can get the spotlight, and then it just doesn't. It's not EQ'd in a way to get the spotlight, and it's not produced in a way that giving it that sort of attention is going to yield great results. It is a muddy sort of production because of the way that it's layered. Um, if you make it the core spotlit element, what the ear is naturally going to move to, I don't think it's going to be a rewarding listen for that. So it makes sense to bring it down and kind of pair it with and even hide it a little under the guitar, but then that leaves the guitar as the lead element, and it's just not doing anything, at least in my mind, worthwhile being in the spotlight. We've inverted the roles here, where the static element is more dominant in the mix than the moving melody. But at the same time, it works because the clear element is in the spotlight and the muddied one is the foundational aspect. It's more of the, what is that? Atmospheric idea. But and so like it leaves me in a weird position because it does work on one level. Production wise, it fits fine. But storytelling wise, it's backwards. Melodically, it's backwards. Production wise, it's fine. Melodic, it's backwards. And I really don't know how to feel about that. I really tried to key into what the vocals were saying, and I had a real tough time doing that, which led my mind to treat it as the background sound that the production is leaving it to be, focusing on the guitar and finding myself ready for the next section to come, and it just never did. It took forever. Even once the drums came in, we really didn't have a lot of interesting things yet. They introduced the hi-hat, the snare, and the bass kick in a very sparse line, not really adding a lot of spice to the song. It wasn't really until, what, 2.5 minutes in, when we really got the first major movement, which was the piano idea. And to me, the flow of the song, the story writing, musically, the pacing is just odd. I don't want to say wrong, right? And I think I've already been a bit negative on this already. I'm going to really try to shift my vocabulary here to something more neutral. But the song was not keeping my attention. I will say that. I don't want to have these overarching ideas of whether it was right or wrong or slow or fast. Personally, I was having a real hard time keeping attention on the track because it wasn't doing anything that was keeping my attention. I wasn't interested too much in the idea it was presenting to me as the lead idea. The aspect I really wanted to pay attention to, I was becoming frustrated listening to, and they left me in this moment of frustration for far too long. Because frustration can be used very powerfully. Powerfully? Frustration can be used very powerfully. And there's a very strong chance we get into the lyrics and thematically the song is about frustration. I don't know. So there could be some lining up of themes there, but not knowing what it's about and just looking at half of the song, which I understand is a flawed way to look at it, but just looking at the music itself, ignoring the lyrical context, I am just left wondering what's going on here. It's missing something, and hopefully that something is the lyrical context. Now, after this, like I mentioned, the piano does come in, and it brings about some energy, some forward momentum, brings some chord movement, and with that brings emotion beyond frustration, right? Beyond isolation. I'd even say the beginning was very isolating with just the two instruments. Um, so we get to bring in these ideas of melancholy is what I get from a lot of the piano stuff. And then we eventually get a lead guitar line that fits more along the lines of something melodic, and it too brings in this pensive element to it all. And here is where I really begin to click with the song. It is sad, but it doesn't know that it's sad, which is a really interesting vibe to go with. Because I still think if you take the piano out of it, it's not really a sad song. And even the piano only sometimes dips into more melancholic lines. Overall, it feels pensive, it feels wistful, almost like it wants something from the past or a feeling from the past that it doesn't know that it wants. The song just feels like it digs into the past looking for meaning of some sort, and it doesn't realize that that meaning is going to be grief of some sort, something a bit more melancholic. Um, and every once in a while, it dips into something that I would say is fairly sad. A leading chord that really points towards something that should move into a chord that brings about a a sorrowful resolution to our progression. But every time we get to this moment where it feels like we're going to get that cathartic release, we push back into something bright. And while it is a resolution, it does feel like we've completed our chord progression. It also doesn't feel like it went where it was supposed to. It saw the signs. It all said turn right to figure out what you need in life, and it said, let's go left. I don't want to know what I need. I want to find something else. And that's what this whole back half of the song felt like. It was frustrating yet again, and that I really wanted this cathartic release. I wanted it to go full on into this sort of sorrowful element and explore it because the song desperately needed to. And instead, we keep resolving to this positive brightness, and it makes the song, I even bounced back and forth a few times during the reaction itself. I was like, oh, this song is sorrowful, melancholy. I'm like, oh, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just pensive. Maybe it's just looking towards the past. I'm like, no, that was kind of sad. That brought some sadness to it. And, no, maybe not. Maybe it's just pensive. And I think that's why, because it kept leading me on, saying, oh, we are going to go towards that direction. Get ready for it. Here we go. Psych. We're going to go towards something a little more positive or neutral. And it never felt like it reached that point that it was supposed to. And it really does feel like somebody who's neglecting the grief process in a sense. And you guys, I feel like I bring up animated films way too much. This is just the life of a dad right here. You guys ever seen Inside Out? It is a phenomenal film. I'm about to spoil it for you. I guess skip ahead. I'll put some timestamps in here. I'll have a section called the Inside Out spoiler in the chapters. Just skip ahead to the next chapter. Anyways, for those who don't care, for those who have seen it, it's the story about a girl growing up, and she has a lot of changes in her life, and I think she's going through puberty as well. She moves to a new town. Her parents are super busy, and she really just needs to express this disconnect in a positive way. And she can't, because the story in her mind is that her emotions, joy and sorrow, get pulled out of the command center, and they have to go through on this adventure through her brain and all that. But Joy is like super commanding, thinks everything should be happy, right? Anger and disgust and fear, those are the bad emotions, same as sadness. By the end of it, though, she eventually just gets to a point where she shuts down completely, and ends up running away from home. And the only reason that the movie resolves is because Joy realizes that sadness is integral to processing emotions. And once they get back to the command center, she lets sadness take over, and she gets to cry in front of her parents, and it like has this huge moment, and it's this part where it's, teaches kids that crying is okay and healthy, and it's a very strong message. And that's what I'm getting here in this song. The song needs to cry. It needs to have that cathartic moment, and it just doesn't. It continues to push towards the happier, or even I'd say just medium neutral feelings in the chord progression, and it never gets that catharsis it needs. And so while we do have chordal resolution in a sense, the song feels like it is constantly unresolved, which makes me feel very frustrated with the song overall, or at least in the last half, which makes it feel overall, because the first half was also frustrating for me for a completely different reason. Um, and yeah, that to me that's the vibe of this track. That's what I'm getting from it, right? We have this really neat layering. And like I said, the whole song is built off of this one guitar line. The one vocal line gets repeated ad nauseum. I feel like the whole song is based off of that one melodic riff, and they just change the words over and over and over for like 5 minutes. The vocals really don't quit. I want to get on in a second. I want to get back to this idea, though, of layers. We start with these two ideas. We add the drums, we add another guitar, we add the piano, and I think we beef up the vocals a little bit. Once we get all the instruments in there, the vocals kind of cut through them. There's definitely something that happened production wise to help them clear up a bit and cut through the noise, but it's still not something that sits above everything else like you would expect in some pop rock music. Like I said, definitely to me a very conscious choice to hide the vocals in the music. And I'm kind of hoping, again, when we get to the lyrics, we'll see why. But this layering idea allows the song to basically be a single idea that slowly gets added to over time. And by the end of the song, if we stripped all the new stuff away, I think we still would hear that original foundation, the same vocal melody, that same single guitar note. We're just kind of adding all of these distractions on top of it. The core issue is still there. We have a guitar with a single note and vocals that are playing around with dissonance. And that's just the whole song is built on this single idea. It's really neat how they can bring it all together and make it feel so different. Each layer brings a different vibe to it, especially once the piano comes in, and we really expand the emotional landscape of the track. But at the end of the day, a lot of that is just dressing to those core problems underneath, which don't really feel like problems by the end of the song, but it's still there. And again, I want to reiterate, problems for me as a listener. I'm not saying anybody who enjoys this is wrong. I'm not saying the Antlers made bad music. Just my personal relationship to this song after a single listen is not wholly positive. What was that thing I said I wanted to talk about, though? I just said it. I don't even know anymore. That is disappointing. I think it was production based. Drums, vocal. I think it was vocal related. Well, isn't that a shame? Maybe we'll get into the lyrics here because I don't think I have anything else to speak about music. Oh, I do want to touch real quick on the visuals. I said it was a really neat metaphor they had going there. And, the whole thing is that as these people play their instruments, they create bubbles, right? All their instruments are bubble makers. And by the end of the song, they are in the bubbles themselves. And I just think this is a really great metaphor for putting yourself in your music. In that, the bubbles are the music, right? They go out to the world. They go through the air. It can seem to be as like airwaves, whatever you want to take that message as. There's a lot of bubbles. They go out to everyone else. Everyone else can see your work. They can see your music. But they don't just hear the music. You have to put a bit of yourself in it. And I think there's even some artists who have said that they lose a bit of themselves in their art, which I think is the idea of breaking yourself apart and kind of losing your fullness. You are no longer one person, you are a combination of parts of your art, which is one interpretation of it. Another might just be, you know, just having yourself literally, parts of yourself literally in your music, where visually here a part of yourself is an arm or a leg or a head. And when people listen to the music, they're also getting a slice, a vertical slice of your who you are. Especially when you make music that is personal to you or close to you. Just a really great way of visualizing that whole concept of putting yourself into your art and then other people, having to digest that along with the music you've created. Just a really nice visual. All right, that other piece has not come back to me, so I guess we're going to move into the lyrics here. Maybe when I'm done recording this, I'll go back and watch and be like, oh, that's the topic, and maybe I'll just interject it in there with some video editing or whatever. All right, anyways, let's dive into the lyrics here. I remember it now. It's the drive of the lyrics. I remembered because I'm looking at a wall of text right now. I think I have seen Reddit posts that are less dense than this. Oh, that's a bad joke. There's just a lot of words here. And the song is a flurry of words. And I think part of that is what might have driven the decision to push the vocals down into the mix and turn them into a texture. Just the constant attacks in the lyrics. There's even very few sections where I'd say the lyrics are I don't know where I was going with that. There's very few sections where the lyrics where there's no singing at all. There's very few moments where we get just the music. So even in the small moments, or even in the moments when we don't have vocals, they're not there very long before we're back to this constant attack. Even if you listen to the vocals themselves, the lines blur right into each other. There isn't like 3 beats. It's not like cramming a line into 3 beats and then having a beat at the end of each bar for silence. Each line is 4 beats long. We have this constant hitting of notes. And I don't think there's any editing because I heard clear moments when the vocalist would breathe, but I still don't think that those microscopic sections of breath actually do anything to stop this constant attack of syllables to feel like anything other than a verbal assault. There is so much of the story that needs to be said in just the 6 minutes of the song that there is a maximum amount of words spoken per minute. And it becomes very unbearable. Well, that is to say, it becomes oppressive, I would say. Not unbearable. Again, trying to get away from the negative descriptions here. It becomes very oppressive, though. There's so many words, and if they were the highlight, the song would just feel like poetry in motion, poetry to music. And while I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, I think deciding that since there's so much story here, that we should turn it into a texture is interesting because it does work musically, sonically. I think making the vocals into a texture works well for what's going on, especially with the way that the vocals are recorded, with that dissonance being a core aspect of it. Not just that sometimes we'll hear two notes that are very close but slightly out of tune, but also that we have metric dissonance as well. Like I had mentioned, where one of the recordings or one of the takes might come in a hair early or a hair late or hold a note over just a hair longer than the other. And we hear this separation between the two takes, between the two layers. So there's separation in pitch at times, there's separation in rhythm at times. It is a very imperfect layering that goes on here. Turning that into something textural, not giving the spotlight to it, makes a lot of sense on a production level. But it also hides this incredibly dense story, and that might not be the best. Maybe it works thematically though, right? I don't know. We're going to get into the lyrics here and see what's going on, because I do have a lot of criticisms about the way the vocals are handled, and I'm really hoping that there's some stuff in here that helps me turn around and see a different perspective of why those choices might have been made. So, in the middle of the night, I was sleeping sitting up when a doctor came to tell me enough is enough. He brought me out into the hall. I could have sworn it was haunted, and told me something I didn't know I wanted. To hear that there was nothing I could do to save you. The choir's gonna sing and this is gonna kill you. Something in my throat made my next words shake, and something in the wires made the light bulbs break. So we have a really steady rhythm to this. We have a steady rhythmic cadence to it. The end of every line rhymes, and it just sort of rolls off the tongue. In a lot of ways, this reminds me of Dr. Seuss's less bonkers style of writing. It's just really great flow. Everything rolls off the tongue very gently, all the words flow into each other nicely, and we have this expected rhyme scheme at the end of every line. It also tells a very direct story with some interesting metaphor. The first line, in the middle of the night, I was sleeping sitting up. What does sleeping sitting up mean? I mean, that could mean a lot of things. It's a big metaphor. But I think it also very directly, even if you don't dig into it, tells the reader exactly what they need to know. That this person is not in a typical situation. Most people don't sleep sitting up. Also interesting, the doctor came in and said, enough is enough, right? That is not, that's some tough love stuff. Doctors don't say that. That's poor bedside manner. Um, so anyways, we seem to have somebody who's sick. Doctor comes in, pulls him out to the hallway. The hall seems haunted, which I'm sure if anyone's about to get bad news from a doctor. Actually, I have gotten bad news from a doctor in a hallway, and I'd say haunted is a very, very good, very good way to describe that. Um, and this person was told that they're not going to live. The disease they have is going to kill them, and they said that they wanted that news. They didn't know they wanted it, but they did. Something in my throat made my next words shake, and something in the wires made the light bulbs break. All right, let's continue on with this. There was glass inside my feet and raining down from the ceiling. It opened up the scars that had just finished healing. It tore apart the canyon running down your femur. I thought it was beautiful. It made me a believer. And as it opened, I could hear you howling from your room. But I hid out in the hall until the hurricane blew. When I reappeared and tried to give you something for the pain, you came to hating me again and just sang your refrain. Now, see, this is very interesting because the perspective is frequently shifting, and I'm having a real tough time keeping up with whose perspective we are singing from. It became very muddied when the doctor came in, and he spoke in second person for the doctor, so the I's and the U's got real muddied there. But it almost seems like we've shifted again. Are we still in the perspective of the doctor? And then if so, who is this you that's in the room? Is there a third person here? It says, I reappeared and tried to give you something for the pain, which makes me think we're still in the perspective of the doctor. But what about the dude we were talking to in the hallway? See, I don't know. There's a lot of confusing elements here. It's not being extremely clear about it. Anyways, we move into the chorus. It says, you came to hating me again, and just saying your refrain. You had a new dream. It was more like a nightmare, and you were just a little kid, and they cut your hair. Then they stuck you in machines. You came so close to dying. You should have listened, or they should have listened. They thought that you were dying. Your daddy was an asshole and he messed you up, built the gears in your head, now he greases them up. And no one paid attention when you just stopped eating. 87 pounds, and this all bears repeating. Very Dr. Seuss-like, though. Also very messed up. We have somebody who has nightmares of being a kid and being bullied. There's also something that seems there's a problem with this person. It could be a mental issue, it could be a physical issue, but the parents did not listen to them. And it seems that the father put emotional abuse on this person as well, and continues to emotionally abuse this person. It says, built the gears in your head, right? Made your mind work the way that it does now. It says now it just greases them up, continues the abuse. But at the time, no one paid attention when you stopped eating. So developed an eating disorder, which makes me think that there might have been a mental issue going on, or maybe an emotional health issue. This person came down to 87 pounds, and it seems that nobody cared. No one paid attention when you stopped eating, even as you got down to such a low amount of, a low weight. So yeah, we definitely have a lot of things here, but where are we going with this? I think that's my big thing. Let's get into the next verse and see if anything develops. Tell me when you think that we became so unhappy, wearing silver rings with nobody clapping. When we moved here together, we were so disappointed, sleeping out of tune with our dreams disjointed. It killed me to see you getting always rejected, but I didn't mind the things you threw, the phones I deflected. I don't mind you blaming me for your mistakes. I just held you in the door frame through all the earthquakes. But you packed up your bags in that bag every night. I would try to grab your ankles. What a pitiful sight. But after over a year, I stopped trying to stop you from stomping out the door, coming back like you always do. No one's going to fix it for us. No one can. You said that no one's going to listen. No one understands. And so there's no open doors. There's no way to get through. There's no other witnesses. Just us two. So verse 1 is metaphorical then. There is no doctor. Or maybe there is, but it's not a doctor, right? Because the chorus seems to speak about somebody. I'm going to guess the other of this group, this pair, this two, right? And it says there's no other witnesses to this, just us two. And it seems to be a lot of metaphor for their relationship. There's earthquakes in a relationship. They dream disjointedly. They got married. They wore silver rings, but nobody clapped for them. And this other person became unhappy with this relationship. Says, tell me when you think that we became so unhappy. So I think this is all a metaphor for a failing relationship here, and an abusive one at that. It seems that this person has phones being thrown. Actually, lots of things. I didn't mind the things you threw. The phones I deflected. And I didn't mind you blaming me for your mistakes, right? So definitely getting the narrator is getting a lot of abuse in this relationship. And the other person packs up every night, it says, probably a metaphor, an exaggeration, but still. And the narrator would beg, grab their ankles, even says it's a pitiful sight, recognizes how pitiful this was. He says, but after a year of this, I stopped stopping you. I let you go out that door because you always came back anyways. Yeah, just a terrible relationship to be in. Just a lot of A lot of abuse going around on both sides almost. One person seems to be, the narrator specifically, seems to be cut off completely emotionally, and the other, the you in this scenario, is just very physically and emotionally abusive. You know, packing up and leaving whenever things get out of hand, making this person beg. That's not healthy. But also assuming that this is the same you from the chorus, this you, the other in this situation, in this relationship, is somebody who grew up around emotional abuse as well, talking about how terrible their dad was and built the gears in their head, greases them up now too. They're just reciprocating. We have invisible circles here. They are treating the person and that they're married to the same way that their father treated them. So yeah, we just have cycles of abuse here, generational cycles of abuse, which makes me come back to this opening verse, and I wonder if this is supposed to be an intervention type thing. So like the bridge said, no one's going to fix us, no one's going to listen to us, no one understands. It says there's no open doors, no way to get through, so there's no other witnesses, just us two. And it feels like they've closed off all doors to anyone else who might say, hey, you know, you're in kind of a messed up relationship here. And I wonder if that's the doctor, right? Is someone else, family member, friend, or whatever, saying, I'm done, right? Because I said this was terrible bed manner for somebody, for a doctor to come be like, enough's enough, man. You're done. No more medical help from you. Get out. You're going to die. No, you know, I could imagine though a friend really trying to paint this picture and say, you know, you two are not good for each other. And after years, just be like, enough's enough. There's nothing I can do to save you from this relationship. It's gonna kill you. All right. I wonder if that's what it's supposed to be. And then we're still in the narrator's perspective when there's this other person in the room that screams and they run to them to try to help them. This is the abusive relationship. This is their partner, right? I wonder if that's what's going on here. We get to verse 3 though. It says there's two people living in one small room from your two half families tearing at you. Two ways to tell the story. No one worries. Two silver rings on our fingers in a hurry. Two people talking inside your brain. Two people believing that I'm the one to blame. Two different voices coming out of your mouth while I'm too cold to care and too sick to shout. Nailed it. Nailed it. Yeah, so this person is just emotionally cold at this point, right? They had already alluded to it with just letting their partner walk out the door and whatever. They'll be back, right? They're emotionally cold to the situation. States it out right here, though. I'm too cold to care and too sick to shout. I'm just tired of fighting. I'm tired of being in this relationship kind of vibe. I like the idea of two here. It's utilized in a lot of ways. We have two ways to tell a story, which is, you know, my version, your version. Two silver rings on our fingers in a hurry shows that they got married too early. They didn't know each other, possibly. Two people talking inside your brain. I know people who have issues with parents and who have, you know, gone through emotional trauma like that. And, you know, they have multiple voices in their head, and one of them might be theirs, but one of them might be the parental figure, right? So I think that's interesting right there to bring that up to kind of address that, you know, the other person is definitely causing issues for them mentally, emotionally, physically, but they also understand that they need help just as much as, you know, the narrator does. But then goes into the next line, two people believing I'm the one to blame, two different voices coming out of your mouth, which I think is an interesting one because this person packs up, says, you're to blame for everything, I'm leaving, and then they always come back. And in abusive relationships, the abuser typically apologizes for their harsh actions. I'm sorry I was drunk, or I'm sorry I was stressed. You know, there's always a reason for it. But those are the two different voices, the aggression and the care. And then from here, we just move into a repetition of the chorus about the dream and the nightmare, being bullied and stuff. Yeah, that's what this whole song is to me. Which is interesting because, by verse 3, uh, it seems the narrator understands that this is not a healthy relationship. Verse 1 definitely does not feel that way. Partner howls, immediately runs into the room, says, "How can I help you? Here's some stuff for the pain." And says, "When I reappear and try to give you something for your pain, you come to hating me again," right? Moves right back into that. So, I got your help. You helped. You assisted me with what I needed. Now you're worthless again, right? But the fact that he ran away from the doctor, which in the metaphor, if I'm correct, is a family member or a friend trying to tell them that this relationship is not healthy, runs right back to the partner and says, "Hey, what do you need?" Right? We move from that to verse 3, which just says everything in here is wrong, right? You have two voices that come out when you talk to me. I'm done with this emotionally. I'm done with this physically. I'm fatigued. I'm tired. I'm too sick and too cold for this. So there is some resolution, or at least some movement towards this idea of understanding that it's a bad situation and maybe moving towards the next step. We don't get that in the song. But musically, we don't hear that resolution at all. In fact, I even mentioned that the song is wistful at times, really moving towards understanding that there's a sorrow that needs to be expressed, but not expressing it. And I kind of think it lines up with the lyrics a little bit. I know this is supposed to be Dissonant Lyrics Week. I don't know if this really lines up as well as some of the other tracks we've checked out. Um, But, I think it's strange that by the end of the song, the music is still reluctant to accept the answer. But by verse 3, we have well, it seems the narrator has accepted that this relationship is not great. However, I think it's very interesting after this, we finish the song on the chorus, which paints their partner in a positive light. It understands that their history is what defines them and is what led them to the moment that they're at now. That when they were a kid, they weren't taken seriously by the parents. They were emotionally abused, and they were, just neglected. They became anorexic or bulimic. They had an eating disorder of some sort, lost a lot of weight, and no one even cared. And it's almost like the narrator is saying, my partner is not great. In fact, sometimes I'm too cold to even care about the relationship, but, she had it rough. Maybe that's why I'm still here. And that's kind of like the lacking of a resolution I get, which lines up so well with the music. Yeah, I can see how somebody might have listened to the song and said that the song is kind of poppy, just kind of that indie rock drabness. And, the lyrics are heavy, right? There's a lot here about, just being in a real abusive relationship. And there is a bit of a dissonance there between the pop rock element and the weight of these lyrics, not just the topic of it, but the density and how much detail is put into the lyrics to talk about this abusive relationship. But I think if you explore the emotional values in the song, in the music, and the emotional values of the lyrics, you'll find that they actually go hand in hand rather well. And I kind of think there is an isolating element here because, they even talked about pushing away all their friends and family, so they're the only people who get to see this relationship, who get to talk about this relationship. And of course, they should not be talking to each other at all. It's just not, there's no equal power here, right? The narrator's partner has all of the power in the relationship, and they continue to wield it to deal emotional damage and physical damage, even in some cases, to the narrator. Um, but where are they going with that? I have been so scatterbrained with this reaction. Um, oh yeah, the isolating element. The isolation of the opening though, right? They are isolated. the two of them, and they're constantly out of sync, like the lyrics, or like the vocals. Two vocal lines doing the same thing, but never quite lining up properly. And the beginning of the song is very isolating, and I think the narrator feels very isolated. They feel very cold and distant from everything around them. They have physically distanced themselves from their family and emotionally distanced themselves from their partner, who's the only one they allow to get close. So there's a very isolating element to it. And, I don't know, to me, there's a lot of stuff that lines up here. And I am kind of coming around to some of the production choices that were made because of the story being told in the lyrics. Just an incredibly dense track. This is definitely something I'm going to have to give a second listen, knowing what the song is about, and see if I can pick up on any other little details here and there. Anyways, those are my thoughts on the Antlers 2. This is where you guys come in. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this one, if there's anything you enjoyed, anything you disagree with me on, anything you want to add to my discussion about. Go ahead and put those things in the comment section. Above that, if you could, head into the description box and check out Linktree. There's a link for it in there. It takes you to this menu. Pretty nifty. It has everything related to the channel. You ever want to pick up some merch? You want to control what songs we check out on the on the channel? Do you ever want to chat with me? Live chat. You can do all these things here. Patreon allows you to vote on future themes and songs. And Discord, it's a chat room basically. I'm very active in there. And you can pick up some merch here as well. You can also follow me on Twitter, as well as a bunch of other things. I mean, look at all those things. There's like 4 icons up top and like 9 or 10 buttons. Go check it out, man. There's lots of cool stuff. Above that, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. Greatly appreciate all 3 of those. All right, we have a special selection coming up next. Otherwise, I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. We're going to check out our final Lyrical Dissonance track and a Pride Month track as well. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.